Thank you, members, for your patience. The Assembly will now resume its sitting. You may continue.
Questions? None. Government statements on recent developments? None. Papers? None. Reports from committees. Report of the Select Committee on Gun Crime and Violence.
The Honourable Member for Valley South is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I beg leave to lay the following report on the table on behalf of the Chair, Mr. Merrick Richardson. The report from the Gun Crime and Violence Select Committee entitled Inquiry into Gun Crime and Violence and its Associated Issues. Madam Speaker, on May 23, 2023, the House of Assembly established a select committee on gun crime and gang violence. The members of the committee were drawn from both opposition and government sides as follows: Mr. Merrick Richardson, the chair, Mr. Jose Vanterpool, Mr. Kenneth Hodge, Mr. Kyle Hodge, Mrs. Shelia Rogers-Webster, Ms. Deanne Kentish-Rogers. The committee was supported by two expert advisors who are with us this morning, Mr. Rudolph Proctor, the former Commissioner of the Royal Anguilla Police Force, and Mrs. Hyacinth Bradley, Community Services Planner. The purpose of the inquiry, as set out in the resolution establishing its existence, was to inquire into and examine the matter of the rising incidence of gun crime in Anguilla. To guide its work, the committee agreed on the terms of reference as outlined. 1, to focus on gun crime and gang violence and its associated issues. The lines of inquiry focus on the following areas: to examine the rising incidence of gun crime in Anguilla, to undertake a situational analysis of the incidence of gun crime and gang violence in Anguilla, to examine the causes of the existing situation as it relates to the rising incidence of gun crime and gang violence, to seek the detailed impact of gun crime and gang violence on individuals, families, and the community, to promote an understanding of the potential solutions and mitigation methods to the rising incidence of gun crime and gang violence as drawn from international and regional best practices, to examine any matters related to the question at hand, and to recommend to the Assembly and those concerned strategies to address the issue. The public inquiry was launched on July the 18th, 2023, to capture pertinent evidence to inform the committee's work. The public inquiry included a number of public sessions, written evidence, along with community outreach. The evidence retrieved covered a broad spectrum of the public sector and that of the wider Anguillian public. Madam Speaker, the committee requested written evidence from the general public and from religious organizations. However, we must point to some shortfalls in the report, which point to the fact that the committee only received a small number of responses from persons in the general public and religious organizations. Madam Speaker, after reviewing evidence, the committee highlighted some of the pressing issues, such as limited border control, security at ports, limited presence of law enforcement bodies, violence in schools, opportunities for young people, financial and otherwise, limited community efforts, and limited family resources to both preventative and post-traumatic measures. However, Madam Speaker, the main issue was gun and gang activity amongst young persons. During the report process, the committee saw a number of incidences of gun activity, which was very alarming. The evidence noted that within the past 10 years, there were 29 homicides, which included a young male of school age. Madam Speaker, this type of behavior is not becoming for our communities, and a collective approach, which the committee recommends, should be taken to eradicate such behaviors on our island. Madam Speaker, there is no one solution to stop gun violence and gang activity. However, the committee has put forward 20 recommendations and would appreciate if all stakeholders involved, adopted said recommendations to curb the surge of violence. I will share 6 of the said recommendations. These include: 1, that Anguilla law enforcement agencies establish memorandums of understanding with regional law enforcement agencies to combat illegal contraband between borders. 2, law enforcers should update the committee on the progress of the local marine base and equipped sea vessel by the end of the first quarter in 2024. 3, the Ministry of Infrastructure, Communication, Utilities, Housing and Tourism, in collaboration with the Anguilla Air and Seaport Authority, should conduct a review on security measures at all local ports by the end of March 2024. Number 4, school officials should exercise strict adherence to the provisions and the related penalties in the Education Act to ensure consistency and equal application. School officials should present a report to the Gun, Crime and Violence Committee showing strict adherence 6 months after notice is received. 5, government to provide financial and personal support to the Community Services Planner to facilitate the development and implementation of a more comprehensive programs offering, catering to the needs of young people and families across Anguilla. And number 6, law enforcers should conduct a comprehensive investigation into the feasibility of implementing CCTV and present a report to relevant stakeholders, including the Gun, Crime and Violence Committee, within 6 months post the publication of this report. Madam Speaker, to further expound on the report, I will move a motion on behalf of the committee for a debate at the meeting of the Assembly on the 12th of December, so that all members of the Assembly may consider the issue at hand. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Member for Valley South, and thanks to the members of the Committee on Gun Crime and Gang Violence. Of course, this report is available to the public now that it has been laid before the House. So members of the public wishing to obtain a copy can do so. It will also be published online. Thank you.
Petitions, none. Government notices, none. Private members' notices, none. Motions, none. Personal explanations, none. Government business, a bill for Goods and Services Tax Amendment Act 2023, second reading.
The member for Island Harbor is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Good morning. Good morning to you and to the Madam Speaker, I beg to move that a bill shortly entitled Bill for Goods and Service Tax Amendment Act 2023 be read a second time.
Madam Speaker, I raise a second.
Madam Speaker, A lot has been said about the goods and service tax of Act of 2021. And certainly one of the decisions that was made by this administration that we would review the act and make amendments as necessary. And there are several things to consider when there is a tax. And one is the revenue that can be raised. Two is the cost of the administration of the tax. And so we rely on the Inland Revenue Department, Customs to give us information. And also we listen to the people, Madam Speaker, to determine if the tax is, or the act is reaching its intent and how it affects specific sectors and areas and the people. So in this amendment, Madam Speaker, which is the first act of the fourth session of the 12th Anguilla House of Assembly, the administration, government is proposing amendments to the Goods and Service Tax Act. Now, there were 5 taxes that were repealed with the implementation of the goods and service tax. That was the interim goods tax, which or affectionately known as the IGT, which was 9%, which was imposed at the port. Now the GST has that up to 4% more, at 13% in specific areas, Madam Speaker, because there are many zero-rated items, which include most food items, which there is no GST at the port or at the register. Contrary to what some pundits may be saying on social media, most food items do not attract GST. Second one was the communications tax, which at the time was 15%, now at 13%. The environmental levy, which was collected by Anguilla, the electricity company, which went from 7% to 13%. But the first 130 kilowatt hours of electricity is zero rated or exempt from GST. This was to proactively help to control the increasing cost of electricity. We also had the accommodation tax, which was 12%, is now 13%, which was paid by guests staying at hotels or short-term rentals less than 6 months. And the public entertainment tax, which was 10%, Madam Speaker. We found that there are certain charities which we have asked to be registered with the Anguilla Financial Service Commission as charities, non-profit organizations or NPOs. And then we determined that since they are charities, that they should not be paying the GST or public entertainment tax. And we decided there should be a cutoff amount of $35,000. So if there is proposed to raise less than $35,000 per event, that there should be no GST attached, Madam Speaker. Also, in these amendments, we looked at the writing off of penalties, which should be by the controller of the Inland Revenue Department, not by the minister. Because, you know, some people may think that it becomes political if the minister has a say in the consideration of the penalties, even though this would be done with the approval of the waiver committee. And we set a limit at $20,000. It used to be $1,000, it's set at $20,000, so that if there are penalties that have accrued and the waiver committee determines that this should be waived, then they make that recommendation to the controller of Inland Revenue, who then will be allowed to do that. Above 20,000, they'll come to Executive Council for consideration. Amended in Schedule 2, Madam Speaker, it was felt that there should be further exemptions, and the exemption that's considered is to insurances. Now, generally, insurance services or taxable supplies under the Goods and Service Act, save for those that involve life insurance, annuities, and savings products, a supply of insurance arranging for the insurance of international transport, and a supply of health insurance. So life insurance, health insurance, and international transport did not have the GST. But then we determined that also that any insurance that has a liability aspect to it should not be taxable. It's difficult to determine partial GST or GST on a part of the insurance product and not on the other. So in reality, it was difficult to tax, because in Anguilla's context, insurance policies commonly include liability components. Example of these would be losses to third-party properties or persons as a result of an accident, property insurance that covers a policyholder's belongings and liability, third-party injuries during construction, homeowner buildings from all risks. So it was determined that even though, Madam Speaker, we determined that the collections between July of 2022 and March of 2023 on insurance was $377.5 thousand, and the estimate for 2024 would be about $500,000. It was determined that it was easier not to charge a GST on insurance products, so we have requested that all insurance products be exempted from the goods and service tax. Also, Madam Speaker, this has been something that has been discussed for decades in Anguilla, removing customs duties and taxes from the drugs, medications, prescribed and over-the-counter. Because there are many medications which are now, we don't need a prescription for. Aspirin, Tylenol, sinus products, cold medicines, headache medicines. And so it was proposed that we remove customs duties from all medications. In our conditional exemptions, the prescribed drugs, we made it so that they would not have customs duties. And in the passage, implementation of Goods and Service Tax Act, prescribed drugs do not attract GST. So we believe this should be extended to over-the-counter medications, because we know that a lot of vitamins and supplements which are necessary for good health care would not be covered under the prescription medications. One of the policy priorities of this government is supporting healthcare in Anguilla by ensuring that persons in the community have access to the healthcare they need without suffering financial hardships. This will in turn lead to an improvement of health via prevention, diagnosis, and treatment. Hence the Senior Shield, Madam Speaker, for those 70 years and older who will get free health care in the public health system. The proposed exemption would support households in accessing medical supplies and equipment at affordable prices, supporting positive health outcomes. And this would be for medical equipment and supplies, Madam Speaker, which include hearing aids, glasses, wheelchairs, canes, walkers, All medical supplies. We do know that in the Goods and Services Tax Act, that health care services are exempted, and so we wanted to include the medical equipment and supplies, and also to have these where the customs duties are removed, Madam Speaker. Also, some clarifications in the Act were done, including lease or rental of land for educational institutions, because we do know that GST is exempted from education services. We want that also to be clarified, that leases or rental of land for educational institutions would also not attract GST. We also wanted to confirm that there's no GST on leases that are long-term, and that's usually 6 months or more. So given this, Madam Speaker, this Goods and Service Tax Amendment Act 2023 is brought to this Honorable House so that we can get these amendments in, and these would come into effect immediately upon assent of this amendment. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. I will now invite debate on the merits and principles of the Goods and Services Amendment Act 2023. I don't know if I have to, if I should set time limits, because usually these bills, these amendments, they take up your entire day, and we've heard this so many times. So I'm just going to be guided by the Assembly now. I'm wondering if I should set a time limit for members' contributions. I don't need to? Okay, great. All right, so I invite debate on the merits and principles of the Goods and Service Tax Amendment Act 2023. Floor is open for contributions. The Single Island Wide Electoral District member, Mr. Joseph Vanterpool, is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, just for clarity, there was only one issue that I had with the amendments being brought forth, and I believe in giving Jack his jacket. In the time that the House was down and waiting for IT, both myself and the Single Island Wide member, Mr. Kyle Hodge, was able to speak with the Premier, discuss the one matter of contention that was here, and we have come to an amicable solution that's suitable to both sides. So happy to support this going forward.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Any other contributions? The Honorable Member for Valley South is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I rise only to give my support for the amendments that the Premier and this administration have committed to making to this legislation. I do want to point to a number or two specific amendments to the legislation that speak to nonprofit organizations specifically, as we endeavor to ensure that the process for persons who are operating within that space becomes easier going forward, and for those in public entertainment with the specific cap on the amount that would be needed for each event. That is specifically relevant when we are thinking about our summer festival activities, and as I said in our last sitting a couple months ago, that the government of Anguilla was committed to going and reassessing the figures in relation to some of the Anguilla Summer Festival events. That particular amendment would therefore give effect to that intention that was spoken to a couple months ago. So in that regard, I think that the Premier and the Ministry of Finance have worked assiduously to ensure that the intentions that we would have shared were brought to effect, and even in terms of the cross-aisle participation in relation to any particular matter that was not the intention of the legislation to be clarified. That is also something that we We always held true to our intention to work together to ensure that all misunderstandings, anything that we want, that the country or that the island wanted to see come to fruition in the legislation would, as best as possible, be effectuated. So thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Any other contributions? The Honorable Member for Road South is recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I am very pleased, Madam Speaker, to see the type of bipartisan support as it relates to the GST amendments, tweaking the legislation, if we may borrow a term, from members of the opposition and of the government. Because it is clear for us, for all of us, that the fact that GST is now a permanent fixture in Anguilla's taxation policy and legislative process. And it is also quite obvious that GST is going to be around for many generations to come. And my great-grandchildren will be partaking in the GST process just because of our particular circumstances. But that does not take away from the fact that occasionally we will have to come to this honorable house to make tweaks to the legislation and tweaks to the amendments and tweaks to what is that applies to GST as GST is applied to, and that is what we seek to do. And I'm very happy that we have evolved as a parliament where persons from either side of the political divide can agree on moving forward with this GST debate, because it was a member for West End, Madam Speaker, who said during the lead up to the election campaign of 2015, when the promise was made to remove the interim stabilization levy, and he said that it wasn't a mistake, so to speak, but it was more of a lesson learned. And in lessons learned, one must be careful when you're in opposition of making certain promises and pronouncements. And that's a lesson for all of us, regardless of which side of the political divide you are, whether you're in government or whether you're in opposition, because the government of the day could be in opposition tomorrow and vice versa. So we must understand the particular situation and circumstances that we find ourselves in. So I'm glad to see that. And then even on the response to the Honorable Premier, the member for Sandy Hill, she made it clear and she made me think. She said, and I quote, "The member for Road South continue to say that the members of the opposition will remove GST, that say that they will move GST and come into office, and she want the member for Road South to provide the evidence that they have ever said that they will remove GST." And I had to really think. And when I went back and I lie down and started think back, and I realized that the member for Sandy Hill was indeed correct. At no point in time did the members of the opposition, whether it was Mr. Cardigan Connor, who represents District 7, whether it was Mr. Jose Van Der Poel, who is a single island-wide member, whether it was Ms. Shirley Rogers-Webster of Valinor, or whether it was Mr. Kyle Hodge, a single island member, was there somebody else? That's everybody. Or the member for Sandy Hill herself. They have never said that they will remove GST, although, Madam Speaker, the member for Valinor did suggest that we should instead look at income tax and corporate tax and other taxes as a replacement to GST. But I would like here, Madam Speaker, because when you're wrong, you should be man enough to get up and apologize. And I would like to apologize to the member for Sandy Hill, and I would like to apologize to the entire cadre of the opposition for making the assertion that they had said that they will remove GST, and I sincerely apologize, because I went back and I realized that at no point in time you did say that. So from me to you, I sincerely apologize for that. But be that as it may, Madam Speaker, I also want to state that these amendments are also tweaking to the legislation. The fact that for many administrations, and I'm going to go back to 1989, Madam Speaker, from 1989, under the leadership of Mr. Emil Gomes, following up with that under the coalition government from 1994 to 2000 with Mr. Victor Banks and Mr. Hubert Hughes, and then the Anguilla United Front administration that was led by Mr. Osborne Fleming from February of 2010 to February of 2000, and from March of 2000 to February of 2010, and then following the administration of Hubert Hughes from February of 2010 to April of 2015, and the administration of Mr. Victor Banks from 2015 to June the 28th of 2020. All of those administrations, Madam Speaker, have sought to remove taxes from prescription medications. I can tell you, as a member of the Hubert Hughes administration, we looked at it, we sent it to PAHO. There was a lot of work that went into that, and we did not get anywhere. For some reason, we could not get anywhere. But somehow, some way, under the leadership of Dr. Webster, he was able to remove the duties and remove the taxes from prescription medication, Madam Speaker. So it goes to show you that there are members in this House who are not yet born when we started to talk about the idea of removing duties and taxes out of prescription medications, Madam Speaker. And I've often said that, you know, a lot of the things that we are doing today are not ideas of this administration, Madam Speaker. I've often said that. I heard the member of ART, the leader of ART, Mr. Curtis Richardson, saying that his vision is being manifested by this administration today. And I want Mr. Richardson to understand that his vision is a shared vision. That vision was shared long before Curtis Richardson was even a toddler, Madam Speaker, because in 1967, Madam Speaker, when the band of rebels, and you want to call them rebels because it was a rebellion, Madam Speaker, hailed from the eastern side of the island, traversing to the western side of the island, decided that we want to have a new Anguilla. The idea was to have road networks, water network, airport infrastructure, and the like, Madam Speaker, better healthcare facilities. This vision was there in the Island Council of 1972, Madam Speaker, and followed by the first constitutionally elected government of 1976, Madam Speaker. This vision is a shared vision. It was the Honorable James Ronald Webster, who in 1976, Madam Speaker, was able to stop the development of land in the Birmingham area of the idea of a commercial airport in the Birmingham area, and started the exchange of lands in the valley proper for that ideal. And that was a shared vision by administrations subsequent to Mr. Ronald Webster's administration, Madam Speaker. But in 2000, a bad decision was made, Madam Speaker, under the Anguilla United Front, a history of bad decisions. And that bad decision was to abandon Birmingham for Wall-Blake. So here it is. And now I want to say to the leader of ART, and I want to say to the people of Anguilla, the idea of an airport, the idea of removing of duties on prescription medication, the idea of removing of duties and taxes on food items is an idea as long and as old as we are, in some instances older than some of us are, Madam Speaker. So there are no new ideas under the sun, Madam Speaker. But what it is a manifestation of those ideas, the implementation of those ideas of old, Madam Speaker. And sometimes you need to have the testicular fortitude, Madam Speaker, to be able to move these things forward. Because I have learned long time ago, Madam Speaker, in my journey along the political spheres, that whenever you seek to do anything, it comes with a tremendous amount of criticism. And this is why persons, when they get elected, they lay back, and then when election time come around, they make excuses for not getting things done, because they know that whatever you do will come with criticism. Whatever, it doesn't matter what you do, will come with tremendous amount of criticism. But once, and what is unfortunate about it is that political parties, they will campaign, and they will say, when we get elected, we will do the Valley Main Road, and the people will cheer. But once that government is elected, Madam Speaker, and they seek to do the Valley Main Road, everybody criticizes the thrust towards developing the Valley Main Road. Because the idea of developing the Valley Main Road wasn't the idea of Hayden Hughes, you know, Madam Speaker. It wasn't the idea of Ellis Lorenzo Webster. It wasn't even the idea of Emil Gomes or Kenneth Harrigan. All of them wanted to do it. Every one of them wanted to do it. And when we decided that we would do it from the very first time on 5th of December 2020, when it was announced, Madam Speaker, the criticism came in. As a matter of fact, I was called a black heart man. He has a black heart, Madam Speaker. But today, we have order on the Valley Main Road. When you come to the center of the city, it looks like the city. And I know that the Valley is not my constituency, Madam Speaker. But if you look at the examples of old, whether it be Washington, D.C., or whether it be Singapore, Madam Speaker, the first area in which you need to develop to show the public, whether it's a visiting public, whether it's a local public, or whether it's the investment community, is the city. To make sure that the city is upgraded as much as possible so you can attract, so that people can see that you're serious about inward investment. So I'm very happy and pleased to see that this bill for the amendment of goods and services tax, the tweak bill, I should call it, is coming to this honorable house and have universal support from all sides of the political divide, because I heard the leader of the other side, the Honorable Jose Van Der Poel, Madam Speaker, get up, and he said this is about bipartisanship, bipartisan support, Madam Speaker, and I'm very happy to see that. But I want to also, if you allow me, Madam Speaker, to really indicate to the public, because we need the public's support and help where this is concerned. Since May of 2022, Madam Speaker, eggs, fish, meat locally produced, bread locally produced, plantains, bananas, dates, figs, pineapples, avocados, guavas, mangoes, mangosteens, oranges, mandarins, Euclid fruit, oranges, tangerines, dried or fresh grapes, watermelons, cantaloupes, musk melons, papaws, apples, pears, quinces, apricots, sour cherries, peaches, nectarines, plums, sloes, strawberries, raspberries, blackberries, mulberries, cranberries, bilberries, haydenberries, and kiwi fruit, Madam Speaker. Durians, persimmons, sapodillas, golden apple, passion fruit, soursop, breadfruit, carambolas, starfruit, ackee, Christophine, potatoes, tomatoes, onions, scallions, garlic, leeks, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, lettuce, wilt-leaf chicory, carrots, fresh or chilled, turnips, fresh or chilled, beets, fresh or chilled, radishes, cucumbers, fresh or chilled, gherkins, peas, chilled, unshelled, fresh or chilled, string beans, shelled, unshelled, fresh or chilled, black-eyed peas, fresh, unshelled, fresh or chilled, leguminous vegetables, pigeon peas, fresh or chilled, unshelled or shelled, asparagus, celery, mushrooms, sweet peppers, spinach, globe artichokes, olives, pumpkins, squash, zucchini, okras, sweet corn, milk and cream, not concentrate or added sugar, Madam Speaker, we got to look at NCDs, rice, flour, sheets, contraceptives, Madam Speaker, sanitary napkins, tampons, paper pulp, cellulose roddens, webs of cellulose fibers, napkins and napkin liners for babies, baby formula, cane sugar, oats, rolled flake or grains of oats, Madam Speaker, and the list goes on. No GST, Madam Speaker. No duties, Madam Speaker. No duties or GST for any of these items. I know for sure, Madam Speaker, that it did not include Mr. Van Der Poel, Jose Van Der Poel's foie gras escargot. And I hope he understands why we don't have foie gras escargot.
On a point of order, Madam Speaker, I'd like to let him know I'm allergic to escargot and all seafood and shellfish.
That's the Adventist in him, Madam Speaker. You know, there's a lot of Adventists in this house, you know, Madam Speaker. I count 1, 2, because Mr. Hodge is an Adventist, 3, and 4, Madam Speaker. There are at least 4 Adventists in this honorable house today. Oh, I was not aware of that, Deputy Governor. I thought you was a staunch Methodist, Bethel to be exact. But, so I could understand Mr. Van Der Poel. I take that back, Mr. Can I strike that from the record that the honorable member is a foie gras and escargot man? Thank you. Thank you for the correction, sir. I stand corrected. But, Madam Speaker, but do you understand why foie gras and escargot is not part of it? It's a luxury item. It's an expensive item. I know the member have expensive tastes. You know, he drives a Jaguar. He drives a Jaguar. So, I understand that, Madam Speaker. And so even on hybrid vehicles, on renewable energy, Madam Speaker, and there'll be more tweaks that will happen, you know, and as you move along, given the fact that we know that this tax, and I hear people saying all the time, Madam Speaker, that GST, I don't know why we debate GST, you know, and I'm glad that we have such peace in the House today. I wonder why. But Madam Speaker, be that as it may, I don't know why we debating the issue of GST as it relates to whether it's here or not. What we should be doing is what we are doing today, by a partisan approach to tweaking it, Madam Speaker. And the reality is that when I hear people saying that GST is collecting so much and so much and so much money, Madam Speaker, remember GST is a consumption tax. The more you consume is the more you collect. And the only way you can consume is if you have a few dollars in your pocket to consume. I mean, hey, I am trying to get a $100 ticket for the United Front event, Madam Speaker. I can't find a ticket, all the tickets sold out. Right, Madam Speaker, $100 US, you know? So it means that there's money in the economy and it's flowing in the economy. And yes, we do have vulnerable people, Madam Speaker. And that is why the member for Valley South is ensuring that...
On a point of order, Madam Speaker. The member would have indicated that our event is sold out, but I would just like to inform the member, I have a ticket right here for him at the low cost of $100 US, just for you.
I love you, Jose. Bro love, not you. All right. You in Road South now, though? You vote for Pat. Don't worry, I got Curtis for Pat. Leave Curtis and Pat duke it out, I'll watch. Madam Speaker, and I afforded, and this is what bipartisanship is all about. I afforded the member, the single-eyed member, the leader, Mr. Joseph Van Der Poel, to indicate to us that he does have a ticket at a low cost of $100. I hope that's a discounted price. Thank you very much, sir. But Madam Speaker, just for me, thank you, Madam. Hey, bald-headed's got to stick together. Madam Speaker, so I'm very happy, very happy to see this bipartisan approach. This is what we needed for a very long time. And it's good to see that we all can get along when it comes to national development. And I'm glad too to see, and I was trying to make this point before the member got up on his point of order, Madam Speaker, as it relates to GST. And I think the member for Island Harbor made the point already that a number of taxes were repealed and replaced. So when you look at the macro GST number, that's the name. But if you had to break that down into accommodation tax, into entertainment tax, and ticket tax, and all of these things, and have the different headings, the GST figure will be shrunk. So basically, the reality is that you're streamlining the tax system. And this is something that has been long recommended. This is something that the Anguilla United Movement, under the leadership of Hubert Benjamin Hughes, actually went to Executive Council on more than one occasion in 2011 and 2013, I believe, to progress the work towards streamlining our taxation system. And it was Anguilla United Front in July of 2009 who also was of the same view. So you can see historically, over the last 14, 15 years, Madam Speaker, you'll see that both administrations have looked at the idea of streamlining our fiscal position. And I want to say this, Madam Speaker, the former leader of the Anguilla United Front, the Honorable Victor Franklin Banks, you know, and I say this with a lot of reverence and respect, Madam Speaker. When he spoke about the GST prior to the 2020 election, he spoke of the reason why we are moving towards that direction. And not once since 2020 have he ever came out and said anything contrary to the position that his government, his cabinet, his executive council have moved forward. Members that included the Honorable Everly Bradley, the Honorable Cardigan Connor, the Honorable Curtis Richardson, the Honorable Cora Richardson Hodge, and I probably may have missed someone, the Honorable Evan McNeil Rogers, Madam Speaker. You know, not once did any of them, except for the persons who have been elected, come out and say anything different, Madam Speaker. So that is important. And why it is important, Madam Speaker, because the question of Senior Shield and the survivability of Senior Shield keep coming up from the opposition side, not necessarily in this House, but on certain programs, Madam Speaker. And why it is important is because Senior Shield is funded, and there's a way to is funded. And sometimes when I hear these things, and that is why I came to the assumption that they was talking about removing GST. And one of the things that we must appreciate and understand too in Anguilla's context is that there are countries in this world, if you look at the United Nations Charter, it speaks about countries that are self-governing and countries that are non-self-governing. Just yesterday, Madam Speaker, I was looking at the swearing-in ceremony in New Zealand. And New Zealand is a former colony of England. And one of the indigenous elected members of New Zealand did a ceremonial chaka, I think it's called, before he swore in his allegiance to the king, his heirs and successors. And now this is an independent country. And when we come to, as a non-self-governing territory, Madam Speaker, when we come to this parliament after the general election, we, although we are appealing to the people of Anguilla, when we come to this house, we have to swear allegiance to the king, his heirs and successors. As a matter of fact, when we go to Ulta, we have to swear allegiance to the queen, her heirs and successors. And I don't care who it is, Madam Speaker, whether it's Don Lahaj or whether it's Abner Brooks who is elected. And if they elected in Anguilla, when they comes to parliament, they have to affirm or they have to swear allegiance to the king, his heirs and successors. It's just part of the process, and especially part of the process of being a non-self-governing state. But if you're Canada or if you're part of the Commonwealth, you have to do the same. Barbados don't have to do it. Trinidad don't have to do it. But certainly, St. Kitts have to do it. Antigua have to do it. Australia have to do it. Canada have to do it. And New Zealand have to do it. And Anguilla is no exception. We have to do it. And one of the things that we must also understand, Madam Speaker, as it relates to how governance works, and this is why we must always seek to educate our electorate. How governance works in Anguilla's context is this. You have an idea that is hatched in the ministry. Or you have, as member Kyle Hodge would say, let's say you have your think tank and the idea is a great idea, and you say, you know what, you want to move forward with this policy and so forth. You go to your ministry and you formulate your policy. And then you get your policy placed on the agenda to the Executive Council. If the governor, Madam Speaker, and this is not a knock on any governor, Madam Speaker, I'm just talking about the governor as a position, who is the chair of the Executive Council, is not a member of the Executive Council, but chairs the Executive Council. If the governor does not agree with the policy that you want to place on the agenda, the governor don't allow it to get on the agenda for the Executive Council, so you can't even discuss it in the Executive Council. This is the reality. But let us say, for argument's sake, the governor does agree, disagrees with the policy, but allows it to come to Executive Council, and it comes to Executive Council, is deliberated at Executive Council, and is agreed by the members of the Executive Council, who are the two ex officio members, which is the Deputy Governor, the Attorney General, and the ministers of government. Those are the persons who make up the Executive Council. Those are the only persons who make up the Executive Council. And they agree that this policy should progress, and also progress towards, and you give legislative drafting instructions to the Attorney General's chambers to draft the legislation to support the policy. It goes to the chambers, it drafts the policy, the ministry drafts the policy, finalizes the policy. I'm not going to include the public consultation aspect of it, but that is part of it too. But the legislation is done. Then the legislation, one is completed, it goes back to the Executive Council. The governor now believes it's a great piece of legislation. The Executive Council believes a great piece of legislation. It goes to Executive Council, Madam Speaker. It's agreed by everybody that it should be moved forward towards public consultation in Parliament. It comes to Parliament. Every member of Parliament, including the members of the opposition, agrees that this is a great policy and piece of legislation, and it passed through Parliament. The Speaker then signs off on that piece of legislation, assents to it. Someone in the Foreign and Commonwealth Development Office, who is the boss of the governor, says, no, we don't like that piece of legislation. Tell the governor not to assent to it. It doesn't become law. That's the reality. And I say all of that to say this, and this is why we need to educate our people. I say that to say this, when it comes to GST in particular, and we in here, all of us know it, every single person in this honorable house knows this, that if GST wasn't passed by us, it would have been passed for us, and what would have been passed for us? All of us would have been crying and bawling today. But I want to say this. So, when you talk about even tweaks to the legislation, when you talk about repealing, when you talk about, oh, you know what? If we get elected, we will remove it on imports with the duties and so forth. Then how do you get it past the process that I just spoke to? Madam Speaker, do you understand? Do you understand? So that is why the member for West End was absolutely correct when he said that you got to be careful and not to make the mistake, to add on to what he said, to learn from that lesson, Madam Speaker. To learn from that lesson. Madam Speaker, it is universally known that the Anguilla Progressive Movement did not agree with the relocation of Campus A to the quarter site. But when we came to office, it was already started. So it was our obligation as an elected government to complete it. Even though we didn't agree with it, we did not agree. And I personally never liked the idea of a cargo port down in Senegal, even as a little boy. When that cargo port, the one that is being decommissioned now, when that cargo port was being built, we used to go down there, play, even when the construction was going on. There was a dog that could dive under the water and so forth. Me and my brothers, now kind of people would go down there and play around the construction site. Didn't have any safety back then, Madam Speaker. And I always thought that Sandygron should be preserved for the people of Sandygron and for Anguilla, in the tourism area, you know, your restaurants, your hotels, your boardwalk and so forth and so on. Mariners was great at the time. Before that, Mariners was thriving. Clive Carter was the general manager. It was a place that I worked during the holidays. My brother, Brian, now rest in peace, this December will be 9 years, Madam Speaker, since I was on my feet when we got the call that he had passed. 9 years, time flies, right? Doesn't wait on us. And Madam Speaker, and I never liked the idea of a pier going in Sandygron. And lo and behold, in 2017, just after Hurricane Irma, I saw the sign go up for a pier in Sandygron. And I protested against it. I protested against it. I thought it was a bad idea. Why not follow the recommendations of the consultants which said we should develop the Deepwater Harbor in the corridor area, Madam Speaker. And lo and behold, we built it in Sandygron. I never agreed with it. To this day, I never agreed with it. But what is the responsibility now? The responsibility now is to get the onshore works done, to complete it, because it's going to be there for another 50, 60 years, man. So we have to live with it. So even if a bad decision was made, whether it's the keeping of the airport in Wallblake, or whether it's the relocation of the Campus B, or whether it's the Sandygron Pier, whatever it is, Madam Speaker, once it's started, you have to make the best of it. And that is the same as it relates to the GST. It started, it is here. We have to make the best of it, make it work for our citizens, make it work for our people, make it work for our businesses. And you can see from the number of times that we have come to this honorable house, Madam Speaker, because the Premier have said from day one that once it gets working, we can then evaluate it and look at it and see where we can make adjustments, Madam Speaker. And the adjustments are being made. Our seniors to this day don't have to pay a bill. There was a gentleman, a cousin of mine who was at a hospital, distant cousin of mine who was at a hospital a couple of weeks ago, and he was at a hospital for 2 weeks. And he was asking the question, oh man, how much longer I have to stay in here? Because I could imagine what the bill is. And I asked him, how old is he? He said 72. I said, you're signing up for Senior Shield? He said, yes. I said, but don't you realize that your Senior Shield, your card, takes away your hospital bill? He said he didn't know that. I said, so stop worrying. Why is it that you're so sick in a hospital bed and worrying about a hospital bill? You understand what I'm saying, Madam Speaker? So today, citizens over the age of 70, Madam Speaker, if they're ailing, primary care, secondary care, hospitalization, any public facility. Now I've seen some people say Oh, yes, but sometimes you go for your medications and the hospital don't have it. Madam Speaker, I can tell you this. All of us in here, nobody in here is a dunce. You might call me a dunce. I may be the dunciest of us all. But nobody in here is a dunce. The member for the single isle white member, Mr. Kyle Hodge, he went to university in the United States of America, Madam Speaker, and he knows this too, that there are certain traumatic incidents that happen to individuals in one particular area, and they still have to airlift that individual to another center, Madam Speaker, because that hospital that is 10 times the size of our hospital and have all of these facilities cannot take care of that situation, Madam Speaker. We know for a fact that when we listen to the debate on about American health care, it's one of the biggest debates in the American political system, health care. Why is it America have all this wealth? Why is it we can spend money in this country, in Afghanistan, in Kuwait, and Iraq, and all, and now soon on our front step in Guyana, Madam Speaker, and we have all of these people who are losing everything due to lack of health care, Madam Speaker. But I had an uncle who died in a hospital in Port Amboy, New Jersey, Madam Speaker, Mr. Austin Hughes. And Madam Speaker, I visited him in 1994. Ian Connor, my other cousin, and I visited him. And that hospital, which holds the name of Jerry Meyer Gomes as a plaque, as one of the founders of this hospital, bigger than anything you see in the Caribbean, Madam Speaker. When you go to the pharmacy of that hospital, there were certain medications you couldn't get there either. That is not unique to Anguilla. It is not unique to St. Martin, Madam Speaker. And you know what I found fascinating as well, Madam Speaker? Even during COVID, you would be surprised the number of people who wanted to come to Anguilla to see the doctor. And people in Anguilla wanted to go to St. Martin to see the doctor for the same ailments. For some reason, wherever you are, people do not trust the healthcare system in their respective destination, Madam Speaker. You know? So, I'm saying all that, and I'm conscious of time, Madam Speaker, and I won't be very much longer, to say this, that yes, GST is great politics for some, but at the end of the day, if you campaign on GST, and people like to say that we campaign on GST. Our primary campaign was not GST, Madam Speaker. If you listen to Kyle Hodge during his campaign, he spoke very little about GST. If you listen to Dr. Webster during the campaign, he spoke very little about GST. If you listen to Deanne Kentish-Rogers, I don't even think she mentioned GST in her campaign, right? If you listen to Ben mention it once, somebody said, "Boy, you need to stop talking about GST." One of my advisors, and I'll call his name, Mr. James Linting Lake, he said, "Better stop talking about GST because when you go in there, you might have to pass GST," and I stopped, Madam Speaker. But the point of the matter is this: when you speak about it, and when you say you're not going to do it, or you say you're going to repeal it like you say you're going to repeal the interim stabilization levy, and then you get in the seat, and then you can't get it done, then what? Then what? So the reality is that those things that we can control, we work on. But those things that are bigger than us, because it was in 2016, in April of 2016, at La View Conference Room, where I sat there with a number of Anguillians from the Anguilla Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Madam Speaker, where they made a GST presentation. And one of the consultants said that the reason why the government have to forward this GST legislation is that we were beholden to powerful international institutions. And Madam Speaker, Kyle Hodge and I were like Batman and Robin that day, because we are challenging the government on a number of different things, including duty-free concessions and so forth. He hit one thing, I hit Nick. We are Batman and Robin. You understand what I'm saying? So close was the relationship. And then we work well together, Madam Speaker. And he knows it. You know? 2016. And Madam Speaker, so the point of the matter, and what I'm saying is that what is behind us is behind us. We need to look to the future. We need to look to the future because Anguilla has come from a difficult place, and we are moving as a country in the right direction. We are building the resilience of this country. And when I hear persons come to me and say, "Hayden, you know, We think that Pat is going to beat you up bad in the election. I say, that is fine. And the reason why it is fine is because when we came in office, there were certain things that we wanted to get done, Madam Speaker. And we got them done, whether it was the Senior Shield, whether it was transformation of our education and here policy, and working on decriminalization, whether it was the fishing and farming and so forth and so on, whether it was the Valley Main Road or the airport, because I know for sure, whatever happens in the 2025 elections, the Anguilla United Front, when they come to office under the leadership of Premier Shelia Rogers Webster, Madam Speaker, they cannot abandon the airport development that has been started. They cannot go to the Altima developers and say, stop developing your marina. They cannot go to Savannah Bay and say, listen, we want you to pack up, Madam Speaker. They cannot say to the seniors, listen, you know what, you enjoy this luxury for a little bit, but we're taking it away. They cannot stop and close down the hatchery. They cannot go to the farmers and take away their what do you call it again? Their shade houses. They cannot, they will not do these things. So the trajectory in which we are placed in this country, right, Madam Speaker, will not be reversed, Madam Speaker. But we cannot take that chance. We cannot take that chance. As Comrade Maurice Bishop said long time ago, AG, forward ever, backward never. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. But I must remind you that while we must look to the future, we must be knowledgeable about our past so that we do not make the mistakes of the past. Good. I recognize the member, the Single Island Wide Electoral District member, Mr. Kyle Hodge.
Madam Speaker, thank you for this opportunity. I didn't really intend to speak this morning or this afternoon, but I had to get up, Madam Speaker, because the member for Road South would have injected a lot of politics, and he would have rambled on many different topics. And Madam Speaker, when the member spoke, I remained silent, and I allowed him to make his presentation. But I am not even 30 seconds into my presentation, and I'm hearing noises coming from the member's side. So I would appreciate, Madam Speaker, if when the member gets out of hand, that you pull him in line. And maybe he should learn the rules, because this debate today is about Goods and Services Tax Amendment Act. But he spoke about the airport, he spoke about Brimaging, and there are different stories on the Brimaging issue that we're also learning about and that I need to do some more research on. But I understand that the Brimaging issue, Madam Speaker, since the member would have raised it, that they found caves in the area, and that would have been an issue as it relates to airport development over there.
Madam Speaker, on a point of order, Madam Speaker, Anguilla's having us on a hold, find caves everywhere, right? That was not the issue. But if he wants to know what the issues are, he's free to come to the ministry, and we'll provide him all of the background information.
And then the member, Madam Speaker, spoke about prescription drugs always being, they made prescription drugs duty-free. I just want to let the member know that prescription drugs was always duty-free. And you can do your research on that.
Madam Speaker, on a point of order, that is not correct.
Prescription?
Yes, prescription. Insulin,
Okay,
and all of these things.
We can do the research.
No, the Custom Procedure Code speaks to it.
Okay. If I'm wrong, I stand to be corrected. But Madam Speaker, I wouldn't really brag and say that this was a great day of bipartisanship. What I would say, because we still have our many differences as it relates to GST, but what I would say is that we were able to have a discussion with the Premier. After speaking with Honorable Jose Vanterpool about the issue that we found, particularly in Section 24, subsection 4 and 5, it seemed to be, not it seemed to be, it would have been an issue to businesses. It would have been an issue to startups. So before the sitting began, both myself and the Honorable Joseph Vanterpool would have spoken with the Premier about it. and we were able to remove the section. And that section pretty much spoke about, allowing businesses up to 12 months prior to being registered for GST, the ability to claim on the GST inputs that they would have spent during the implementation of their business or the construction of their business. So it was a good spirit of unity that we all agreed that this should not form part of the amendments today. So as it stands, in the committee stage, we'll see that the removal of section 24, subsection 4 and 5 will not be a part of the amendments. And I thank the Honorable Premier for listening, understanding, making the necessary last-minute phone calls to verify, and having consultation with the Attorney General who sits right behind him. I really appreciate that. So, Madam Speaker, before I sit, the member for Road South would have said also that they did not campaign really, quote unquote, against GST. But it's the same member who had a radio.
Madam Speaker, on a point of order.
Can I make a point?
I did not say we did not campaign really.
What did you say?
I said that GST was not the primary campaign issue during the campaign.
Okay, it was not the primary issue. And Madam Speaker, I beg to differ with that statement, because even before the campaigning started, the member was a host on a radio program on a Thursday night. And the member would have criticized even the IGT implementation that was supposed to be revenue neutral, and it may have been off by a few cents. That was an issue for the member. And he campaigned heavily against the IGT and also the GST. In fact, he said GST would be like yellow dad on your favorite mango tree. So it is disingenuous, Madam Speaker, at this point in time, to try to mislead the public that it wasn't a major part of your campaign. Yeah. Yes, of our, right, and that's why I stepped away. So, Madam Speaker, today wasn't a day for this back and forth. We could have been out of here an hour ago, but the member, he campaigns for the last 3 years, campaigning, every day is campaigning. And that in itself, Madam Speaker, is what drives the divide between us. So while he is boasting and bragging about a little bit of bipartisanship today, maybe you can remove some of your usual politics, member, and things would be a lot better. So, Madam Speaker, I just want to thank you for this brief moment that I've had to say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you. The member for West Denton is recognized.
Yep. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I often say anything that comes to the House or anything that benefits the people of Anguilla, I would support. And obviously, today, this is something that I definitely support. And what I would dearly love to support is what I saw, and more of it, earlier, when what could have been a debate of back and forth, that two of my colleagues who've done a great deal of their research on the GST and the effects that it has on our people was able to go to the Premier, and like a true leader that the Premier showed today, he was prepared to say, you know what, I need to get more information on this. And again, Premier was pleased with that. Quite often, Madam Speaker, when I speak to people and I ask them, or they ask about the House and what happened in the House, today could have been one of our better days. Not because it would have been short, but it showed that we're prepared to work together. And when people elect government, whether it's ruling government or opposition, they want to still feel that they're being represented and their voices are heard. And quite often, their voices will be heard through the persons that they voted for. And if we can, I know it's going to be a big challenge, and because just what my colleague mentioned, my colleague from across the way from District 6 would have thrown a couple of jabs where he referred to the Honorable Joseph Vanderpool as the leader a few times. And then at the end, he said, Premier Shelley Rogers Webster. Some people might laugh at that, but a lot of our people listen. They listen and they take on board. Sometimes we try to bamboozle people. And I often hear people talk about this game of politics. It is not a game when you're dealing with people's emotions and people's lifestyle and the people's life habits. So again, it is desperately important that we are honest with our people and not play games with them. Even this whole thing about the GST, the effects of the GST, it's not about the Anguilla United Front. It is about the effects it's having on the people of Anguilla. So Madam Speaker, again, we all can agree to disagree, but at the end of the day, what we've got a responsibility to is the people of Anguilla. So Madam Speaker, I thank you for this opportunity, and in this festive season, I think we can agree to disagree, but make it an amicable disagreement. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member for West End. I believe, are there any other contributions? If there are no other contributions, I invite the mover of this bill to respond, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to thank everyone who participated, Madam Speaker, and certainly accept that this was a good show of bipartisanship in terms of discussions based on the amendments that were done prior to the debate, and I certainly thank the members of the opposition that pointed out where there was an amendment there that could have had some effects, and we were able to get that sorted out with the Comptroller of Inland Revenue Department, the Attorney General, the members of the opposition, and the members on our side. I think in defense of the member for Road South about saying there were possible leaders on the other side, I think, if the leader of the opposition, who is the leader of the AUF, or the deputy leader do not win their seats, then it's possible that anybody else could be the premier if that team gets, the majority of the votes. So I just want to say that the member was not being facetious. He was just pointing out these possibilities in Anguilla where anyone that goes up can become the leader and premier if their party gets the, the majority. Or a coalition forms, and that is arranged, right? I think that's what the member was hinting at. Well, Speaker, it's good to know that we can make these amendments as we go, which have the effect of helping the people, because here in this hurricane zone, we want to make sure that persons do not feel that they can't afford the insurance and have their homes covered, their businesses covered, because of the imposing the goods and service tax. So that will be removed from insurance, all insurance products. In terms of the non-prescription drugs, that they will also now not incur any GST, because it is difficult given the tariff for customs to determine what is GST exempt and what is not. So now there'll be no GST on any medications, prescription or over the counter. And Madam Speaker, we also did take to the Executive Council that we would remove customs duties on non-prescription drugs and all prescription drugs, where prior it was covered in the conditional exemptions and required that the Chief Medical Officer had to sign off on certain medications. So I'm happy that we've been able to get this into the House and anticipating that there will be, full support. I appreciate that. Certainly it is, the season of giving for Christmas, and certainly want to thank the members of the opposition for understanding the reasons why these amendments are being made and, given the support. So again, I want to thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, members. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Honorable Member, and thank you to all members for their contributions. It has been moved and seconded that a bill shortly entitled Goods and Services Amendment Act 2023 be read a second time. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. I call upon the clerk to read the bill a second time. Borrow a mic.
An act to amend the Goods and Service Tax Act 2021, Act number 18, 2021, second reading.
Under Rule 45 of the House of Assembly Rules of Procedure 2021, the bill now stands referred to a committee of the whole Assembly to be considered clause by clause. Assembly in committee?
General amendment.
Madam Chair. Thank you. Madam Chair, I have a general amendment that clauses 6, 7, 8, 9, 5, and 10 shall be renumbered in consecutive order as new clauses 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 respectively.
Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I'd like to second the amendment.
Thank you. I put the question that clauses 6, 7, 8, 9, 5, and 10 shall be renumbered in consecutive order as new clauses 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 respectively. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. Clause amended as presented and do stand part of the bill.
Clause 1.
I put the question that clause 1 do stand part of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it.
Clause 2.
Madam Chair, I have an amendment. In Clause 2, in the definition of public entertainment, by inserting the phrase "in relation to any event" after the phrase "is not projected to exceed $35,000."
Madam Chair, I'd like to second the amendment.
Thank you. I put the question that clause 2 be amended as presented and do stand part of the bill. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those against, say no. The ayes have it.
Clause 3.
Madam Chair, I am recommending that Clause 3 does not form part of the bill and that the numbering Yes, I'm recommending that Clause 3 does not form part of the bill and that the numbering following that would be amended.
Madam Chair, I'd like to second the amendment.
The amendment is that Clause 3 be deleted and the numbering follow that to be corrected. That's-
Correct.
yeah. Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those against, say no. The ayes have it.
Clauses 4 to 10.
I put the question that clauses 4 to 10 do stand part of the bill. Those in favor, say aye. Aye. Those against, say no. The ayes have it.
The title and the enacting clause.
I put the question that the title and the enacting clause do stand part of the bill. Those in favor, say aye. Aye. Those against, say no. The ayes have it. The Assembly will now resume its sitting. Mover may report.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to report that the bill shortly entitled, A Bill for Goods and Service Tax Amendment Act 2023 has passed through committee with amendments and is ready for its third reading.
Goods and Service Tax Amendment Act 2023, third reading.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move that a bill shortly entitled, Bill for Goods and Service Tax Amendment Act 2023 be read a third time and pass.
Madam Speaker, I raise the second.
It has been moved and seconded that a bill shortly entitled Goods and Services Amendment Act 2023 be now read a third time and passed. Those in favor, say aye. Aye. Those against, say no. The ayes have it. I call upon the clerk to read the bill a third time.
An act to amend the Goods and Service Tax Act 2021, Act number 18, 2021.
Bill read a third time and passed.
Private members' bills, none. Private bills, none. Other orders of the day.
Thank you. I just wish to place on record hearty congratulations to the Single Island-wide Electoral District member, Mrs. Quincy Gums-Marie, upon completion with honors of her master's degree. Indeed, it's a great step, and I wish her continued success in all of her endeavors. The floor is open for any orders of the day. The Honorable Single Island-wide Electoral District member, Mr. Joseph Vanterpool, is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Good afternoon to you, the fellow members in the House, the parliamentary staff, those in the gallery, and those following us via live stream and radio. Madam Speaker, I wanted to take this opportunity to update yourself, this honorable House, as well as the listening public, that on behalf of Anguilla and on behalf of the House of Assembly, I'm currently representing via attending a Commonwealth Parliamentary Association virtual conference that's taking place over the current 3 days. The conference would have began yesterday, continued into this morning, and will finalize tomorrow. The conference is aimed at discussing the fourth industrial revolution, artificial intelligence and Parliament, and it's focused around ensuring the integrity of our digital democracy. This is an international conference that brings together parliamentarians, speakers, experts in artificial intelligence, stakeholders in the field, and policymakers from around the world and around the Commonwealth. In fact, Madam Speaker, there's such a diversity in terms of countries and time zones being represented that they had to factor in the timing of the conference in order to accommodate all time zones. So while I was fortunate enough to have been able to enjoy the afternoon from 1 to 5 in this conference, this morning I wasn't that lucky, when the conference would have began at 2 a.m. So the day is far and well spent. But Madam Speaker, as it's a sacrifice that we all had to do for the good of the policy being developed, I'm honored to be in a position to do so. I would like to just give a quick recap of what the conference has discussed in the coming days so far. Yesterday, we would have discussed and gone through the history of global disinformation, generative artificial intelligence, synthetic media, and finally, the role of artificial intelligence-generated disinformation and how it impacts parliamentarians and threatens democracy. Now, Madam Speaker, I know that that's a mouthful. Essentially, disinformation would have existed since the advent of the newspaper and the print media. The moment that it was created for genuine information to be spread, there was always those who would have used that media in terms of manipulating the public for social, political, financial, and other means. The integrity of information matters as it helps people to make clear decisions and understands the consequences and impacts of those said decisions. For the sake of further clarification, generative artificial intelligence refers to AI that can produce text, code, audio, or video on demand, oftentimes now being able to combine these modes. Synthetic media refers to artificially created hyper-realistic videos and audio that cannot be discerned from something that is original. As an example, Madam Speaker, the invitation for this conference, to those who have saw it, would have saw a lady introduce herself, speak about the conference, invite members to the conference, followed by a screen that says, this person does not exist. This entire video and this entire invitation was artificially generated. Further examples that we would have seen throughout the course of the conference highlighted, Madam Speaker, there would have been a case where I believe it was either earlier this year or last year, the leader of the opposition in the UK House of Commons would have come under some scrutiny after a video would have been circulated with her berating some of her staff members, only to find out that that never happened. This was confirmed. Her staffers have confirmed it. I don't believe she was even in the area where she was purported to be. That video was completely artificially generated. So far, we have seen in both the 2020 and the upcoming elections in the United States, artificially generated videos, both targeting President Trump and President Biden, none of which were actually purported to be true once verified. So, Madam Speaker, we see the threats and the dangers that could potentially be presented with the advent of such generative AI and synthetic media. The old adage that seeing is believing is no longer the case, as we simply cannot see something and verify it to be true because we've witnessed it, unless you were there in person. So, Madam Speaker, we can think and imagine the lengths and depths of consequences that this would have, not only for our democracy, but for our justice system, for our courts. How do you go about verifying evidence if you can be able to manipulate and fake it to such an extent? What is now the burden of proof for verifying whether something did or did not take place? What will juries have to rely on? AI has been a challenge for parliaments around the world as the parliamentary process is slow, yet this technology is fast. But, Madam Speaker, it is of utmost importance because about 70% of democratic countries are expected to go to the polls for elections next year. And this would represent over 4 billion people. I'll leave it up to the Premier to see if it's 4,015,000. On day 2 of the conference, Madam Speaker, which would have taken place this morning, we discussed AI-generated disinformation in more detail, today's current threat landscape, which is inclusive of the actors, what motivates them, what tactics they utilize, and what we as parliamentarians and policymakers can do to combat this threat. all while capitalizing on the true benefits that generative AI also produces. The different types of actors include individuals, extremist groups, political campaigns, foreign state actors, and organized crime groups. Madam Speaker, it was even noted that what would once take 30 ISIS operatives working out of an office together where they had to communicate can now be done by a single individual in a basement unknown to anyone with the power of this technology. With these kind of actors given access to such powerful and far-reaching technology that's now widely and cheaply available, we must be concerned and we must not wait to act. Candidates, politicians, political spokespersons are all found to be proponents in the past of disinformation for obvious reasons. We need to disincentivize this behavior, and one practical means of suggested in doing so would be by instituting fines and putting in place penalties for intentional mis- or disinforming of the public. However, Madam Speaker, if you can't find the source of the disinformation or misinformation, if you cannot locate where they're operating out of, you can't charge them. You cannot penalize them. So the wider problem still exists. I look forward to concluding the conference with tomorrow's session, and I'm proud to say that Anguilla is represented and has a voice in shaping the future of global policy surrounding the opportunities and risks associated with AI. Artificial intelligence continues to grow in importance, as I'm sure we'll see both nationally in the budget debate and internationally. So, Madam Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity to update yourself, the House, and the listening public about Anguilla's participation in the CPA conference, and I would like to thank the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association for including us in the conversation.
Thank you also, Honorable Single Island Wide Electoral District Member, Mr. Joseph Antapool. Are there any other orders of the day? The member for Island Harbor is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, last week was Tourism Week, and certainly the Minister for Tourism said it was successful. I would just like to take this opportunity to congratulate Karen Toney and Mr. Richard Schultz for choosing Anguilla to have their wedding ceremony. And Madam Speaker, as everyone would know, Mr. Schultz is the owner of Aurora Resort and Golf Club. And this has been a great addition to Anguilla. Certainly want to commend Mr. Schultz and his new bride for choosing Anguilla to have such an important ceremony. They could have done it anywhere, but it chose Anguilla. It just shows that the safety, the beauty, the hospitality of the people of Anguilla is coming to the fore. And just want to say there's a new water park at Aurora with water slides and lazy river, a family atmosphere. And so given that we are enhancing our tourism product, that this should be something that is for visitors and locals, Madam Speaker. Also, UK Health Security Agency was here last week with the UK Overseas Territories Antimicrobial Resistance Conference, teaching our lab workers, our health providers about the risk of the superbugs or bacteria getting so strong that they're not are resistant to the medications that we have. This was important, and it was good that they chose Anguilla to have that. They were members from the overseas territories, including St. Helena, which is, as you know, since you have visited, Madam Speaker, it's a long way down in the South Atlantic. Also on island is the Resembit team and the Resembit projects. Maybe the member for Road South can talk more about that, since they've covered some of the projects under his ministry. But these are EU-funded projects, Madam Speaker, so it's good that even after Brexit, we still can benefit from some of the funding that we would have been eligible for from the EDF. We still, because we are part of a regional group, including St. Martin, St. Martin, which are still in the EU, we have benefited, and certainly it's good to know that our neighbors still look out for us. And I want to thank the project managers and the teams for pushing these through, which include renewable energy projects, which include climate and environment projects, Madam Speaker, which are important to us. We have a small island that that has been, given unto us to protect and to maintain for the next generation and the next, and we should do our part as good stewards, and I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member for Island Harbor. Are there any other orders of the day? Just to place on record, our thanks and appreciation to Miss Anissa Powell. Everyone here would know her, a past member of staff of the House of Assembly. We want to thank her for her hard work here at the Assembly and wish her well in her future endeavors. I believe that concludes the orders of the day.
Adjournment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to move that this Honorable House be adjourned until Tuesday, the 12th of December, 2023 at 10 a.m.
Madam Speaker, I raise a second. Thank you.
It has been moved and seconded that this Honorable House now stands adjourned until December 12th at 10 a.m. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. This Honorable House now stands adjourned until December 12th at 10 a.m. Thank you all. Have a good day.